All right, hello everyone. My name is Michaela McLean Wilkes with Liberty Counsel Action. I am here with Jonathan Alexandre, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Liberty Counsel and Liberty Counsel Action. Jonathan, thank you for being on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Michaela.
Yeah, so let's talk about HR 1425. So, a little background is this week on September 11th, just 2 days ago, the House of Representatives passed HR 1425. The name is kind of long. It's called the No World Health Organization Pandemic Preparedness Treaty Without Senate Approval Act. And it passed by a vote of 219 to 199. And basically, it requires that any agreement reached by the World Health Assembly would be treated as a treaty and therefore be ratified by a supermajority of the Senate as outlined in the Constitution. So, Jonathan, kind of just break this down for us. Can you just explain what does this bill really mean and why is it a big deal for us to know?
Yeah, so this is a bill that's sort of long time coming. Since the pandemic, you had the WHO, which is an unelected body, sort of say, hey, we really need to put the squeeze on some of these majority nations, which basically means we need to put the squeeze on the United States and basically
Mhm.
force the United States to carry the load when it comes to pandemics, a future pandemic that the WHO can potentially name on their own and decide that the United States has to carry the load for the rest of the world in terms of the medicines or having requiring the security clearances and
Mhm.
all sorts of different things that really are inconsistent with what the U.S. Constitution allows the U.S. to do, but at a very fundamental level sort of cuts out all of the public from joining in this discussion. So the WHO has trying to push these mandates. There's a bunch of shalls in this mandate in this so-called treaty that really forces nations to participate in one way when it comes to the future pandemic. But we have the Constitution. We have something that stands in the way of the U.S. or the president unilaterally agreeing to something without the consent of the Senate. So that really long title that you mentioned basically is a nutshell of what the bill is. It says before the US commits to something or before the president commits the United States to something that the rest of the world is doing or this WHO organization is doing, they have to get approval from the Senate. The Senate that is directly elected by the people and responsible to them, they have to approve whatever the president decides to enter into or whatever the WHO decides is a shall for our country to do.
Right. And do you think the Senate will even now vote on this? And if so, when would that be?
Yeah, so it's sitting on Schumer's desk right now. It passed the House, and it's important the progress of how it passed the House because just a few years ago there weren't many offices talking about that. I don't think there were many organizations
Right.
lobbying for this. Every time we'd go to the Hill, we'd have to educate folks. So to get a full up and down vote where every member of the House is on record, where there was an open amendment process, certainly demonstrates that this has gone through regular order. This is something that the House has passed. Schumer can take it up, whenever he wants to. It's on his desk right now, and I think he's sort of playing politics with it. So
Mhm.
the president, Biden, came out with a statement of administration policy, sort of decrying the bill, saying that you don't have to bring this forward. This is going to limit my power. I think Schumer may lean on that side, but by doing so, he's forgetting a good portion of the Democratic caucus that realizes that we do have to stand against China and some of these big powers that are influencing the WHO. So it's on his desk. He has all the reasons why he should bring it forward for a vote. We just have to continue the work in order to make sure he does.
Right. Personally speaking, why do you think the Democrats don't, some of them prioritize this issue? I mean, we're talking like a future pandemic. And if we all remember 2020, how much this changed our everyday living, like, why is this not a top priority for them?
Yeah, it seems that power grabs, wherever they come from, as long as they can participate in it, they seem fine with it. So that
Yeah.
would be the one reason. Like, hey, we're not opposed to tyranny and power grabs. The second thing is, hey, let's just pass the buck to someone else. Let's just make all this someone else's responsibility. I'm sort of fishing here because I'm not entirely sure why, when given the opportunity, the Senate won't say, yeah, we have this constitutional power to place a check against this president or any other future president,
Right.
regardless of political party. It just arms the Senate with what the U.S. Constitution always says it has the power to say, yes, we approve or disapprove in a president's unilateral action, specifically on a health subject or anything else, even when it comes to war or peace or any other treaty the Senate has that power there. They should want to exercise this power. So it's hard to see why a Democrat run Senate is waffling and running away from this issue. I think, ultimately they are caving to China, they're caving to
Mhm.
WHO and other globalists that are really trying to push a narrative that isn't one of freedom. It's not one of rights. It's one where there is tyranny and control. But right now, the Democrats want to cede that over to the WHO and not take the responsibility.
Right. Well, and on the same lines, on the opposite side here, last week, this kind of flew under the radar, but 26 Republican governors issued a statement saying, hey, the World Health Organization is attempting this one world control. Like, we're not doing this. Like, Republican governors will not comply. And it was 26 governors. And so, why is it important that we need to stay up to date on this information of Republican governors? Like in a year where you're not really hearing much about the World Health Organization, we need to know why they're standing up behind the scenes. So why is it important to stay up to date with these developments?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's an undercurrent of freedom versus tyranny that is always existing in this country. And obviously, it came to light during the pandemic, where I assume these 26 governors as well, or a good majority of them, certainly ones that are popular that we can name, DeSantis being one of them, said
Mhm.
no, we control what goes on in our state in terms of recognizing freedom, recognizing the right to travel, recognizing folks' ability to worship and to find a good balance of life, being aware of the illness that's going on, but also being aware that our constitutional freedoms don't go away because it's tough to maintain them at this time. So
Right.
I assume that those 26 governors are the type of governors that are saying, no, 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 this is a freedom issue, it's a rights issue. We still care for the health and safety of our people, but we're not going to exchange that for tyranny, and we're not going to have that dissolve as soon as it becomes difficult to uphold freedom. So uh, that's why those governors did that. I think it's a strong
Mhm.
way to interpose, a strong way to stand in between what a president might unilaterally try to do. It's a strong way to interpose between what the World Health Organization and its tyranny ultimately wants to do with what seems like the entire world.
Right.
So kudos to those governors. It takes a lot of effort for the
Mm.
groundswell to reach governors to have them have that conviction and know it reflects the people. That's basically what this 1425 bill is all about, saying that if there is a groundswell, if the uh, electorate is paying attention to the subject, then Senate, you have to vote a certain way. You have to
Right.
either approve or disapprove what a president is doing, and that's what the people have the constitutional right to require the Senate to do.
Absolutely. Now, going forward, if it doesn't pass the Senate and it just stands still here, what is one thing that LCA listeners can do? What's an action item where they can feel like they're moving the needle forward?
Yeah, well, the awareness I think is one thing. I stated, just over a year ago, you could have this conversation, all up and down the halls of Congress, and not really get much feedback because not a lot of folks were talking about this. But
Right.
we all can remember what it was like to, be forced in blue states and other states to be locked in our homes for making decisions on health and things that individuals could decide, certainly not wanting to trade their freedom
Mhm.
for things that they did have and do continue to have control over. So, our constituents can remember that time, realize that, yeah, it was certain governors in certain states, but now put that on a magnanimous scale where it's an entire organization apparatus operating outside of the United States, forcing those same lockdowns, forcing those same vaccine passport requirements,
Right.
requiring us to interact with nations all over the world when really the concern should be for our homes, for our families, and for freedom. So that has to be at the forefront of our mind. 1425 is on Schumer's desk. We can make the efforts of saying it's not just regarding this one small facet of international relations. It's a way for us to stand up against China. It's a way for us to uphold our constitution. It's certainly a way for us to advance freedom, and whenever the opportunity is given to us to really push that narrative to Chuck Schumer and to some of these Democratic senators that would be in favor of a bill like this, I think we ought to continue to make our voice heard.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for LC Action being able to be one of those voices that is spearheading this issue and just bringing awareness. I do know we have a lot of resources on our website as well that break down a lot of what people can do and where they can find more information just for the average Joe Schmo that may not know that there are these globalists that are trying to have this power grab against our nation and against the world. So Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
appreciate you filling us in on HR 1425. And we'll talk next time. Thank you.
We'll keep fighting. Thanks so much, Michaela.